Let's get to it first. Pierre Poilievre says common sense conservatives motion on Trudeau convening a televised carbon tax meeting with Canada's premiers passed. Trudeau must listen to Canadians on the financial pain his carbon tax is causing. So in the chamber, the vote was 172 yeas to 150 nays, and carbon tax emergency meeting that the House declare that the Prime Minister convene a carbon tax emergency meeting with all of Canada's 14 ministers, that this meeting address the ongoing tax crisis and the financial burden it places on Canadians. B, the Prime Minister's recent 23% carbon tax increase. C, plans for provinces to opt out of the federal carbon tax to pursue other responsible ideas to lower emissions, given that under the government's current environmental plan, Canada now ranks 62 out of 67 countries on the Climate Change Performance Index, and that this meeting be publicly televised and held within 5 weeks of this motion being adopted, sponsored by the leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre. And so that's interesting. Do you think that that's going to happen? I don't know. Very, very interesting stuff. The maneuvering, and it doesn't look good for Justin Trudeau to have to do all of this. And so I really think he's going to try and weasel out of it, because that's what he does. He's a weasel. Scott says the absolute arrogance of this minority liberal regime is astounding. So Chrystia Freeland still thinks that they shouldn't have to meet with those icky premiers, right? Climate change is too important. Here we go.
There's an Opposition Day motion today calling on your government to hold an emergency carbon tax meeting with the premiers, all premiers. Will you hold that meeting?
Our government has been very clear, and the Prime Minister has been very clear about our position on the price on pollution. I think any discussion of the price on pollution needs to start with the reality. And that is that our rebates deliver more money to 8 out of 10 Canadians than they pay in.
It really should start with reality. And that ain't it. That's not reality. Chrystia Freeland is lying and still lying. And this is another reason I think this is not going to go anywhere. So maybe the premiers are going to get together and say, this federal government is rogue. This federal government doesn't deserve our allegiance. This federal government doesn't deserve our tax dollars, all sorts of things. But then the federal government will find a way to punish the provinces through withholding money, right? So
the rebates are really an affordability measure that help the most vulnerable. We can't lose sight of that in this conversation.
The carbon tax rebates are an affordability measure that help the most vulnerable. So carbon tax is a money redistribution scheme to help the most vulnerable? I thought it was to reduce emissions.
Second thing that is really, really important, and I'm speaking now as the finance minister, for us to recognize is in 2024, it is not possible to have an economic plan without having a climate plan. And the reason
because the WEF will blacklist your country if you don't do all of this crazy stuff. That's why. And she's a chairperson on the WEF, so she knows.
The reason for that is really simple. Canada is a trading nation. If we want foreign investors to invest in Canada, if we want other countries to buy what we are producing, we need to have a strong climate plan. Otherwise, Canada will simply not be able to participate in the global economy. And that is really important for people to recognize as well.
Like we're not participating in the global LNG economy right now? There's no business case, says Justin Trudeau, right? Like that, Minister? Are you kidding? Holy smoke. So Chrystia Freeland doesn't want to have this meeting. And she says, in order to have this meeting, we have to all agree on this false version of reality that the Liberals have cooked up because reasons. And that's not going to work with actually having a conversation about the affordability crisis that these people have unleashed, the housing crisis that these people have unleashed, the food pricing affordability crisis these people have unleashed because of their carbon taxes, which are inflationary. If they don't want to talk about reality, if all they want to talk about is their version of reality, then the ministers' meeting isn't going to get anywhere. Also, something like that, if you have 4 people on a panel or 5 people on a panel, it starts to get really hard to hear from everybody in a way that's really fulsome, right? A good conversation is two people, because the two people can really get into it, right? Maybe three if you could manage it well, and one's kind of bridging the gap between the two. But then after that, it gets unwieldy, and usually you'll just hear like talking points from people. Like you can't get into the nitty gritty of a topic. So having 9 premiers or 7 premiers or 7 premiers and Pierre Poilievre, or however this is structured in a televised thing, I mean, do they get a conch shell? Are they, who decides who's speaking? How does anybody effectively and meaningfully convey what's going on to people who don't want to hear it, who are ideologically pushed to not understand this because they've based their entire political career on this being true and this being the solution, and we've just got to go through this pain, and utopia is just around the corner. We know we're destroying the country. That's part of the plan. They don't want to hear it because that's part of the plan, right? Klaus is loving this. So this meeting is not going to be done. It's not going to solve anything. It's not going to be a solution, right? It's going to underline how absolutely terribly broken and unable to solve problems we are, basically. But that's not because Canadians can't solve problems. That's because there's a group of people in the leadership at this point in time who are ideologically captured by a cult of some kind, by a group who's leading the world to its own destruction, whatever you want to call it, Mr. Global, whatever it is. They don't want to hear the realities that the premiers are trying to bring to the table. And the premiers, some of them may be on the right path. Like Higgs, he seems like he's on the right path. Danielle Smith sometimes shows signs of being on the right path, and other times I have to question what the heck's going on. Doug Ford, I mean, you have to question what the heck's going on, right? Like, how can you sit there and allow segregated dances in high schools and ignore it? How could you sit there and allow SOGI education, etc.? How can you sit there and allow lockdowns? How? I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense to me. So on one hand, I think, maybe the premiers are going to go to bat and say, like, definitely we have to stop this carbon tax craziness. On the other hand, maybe there's there to say, what's in it for me, right? With the exception of a few notable standouts, right? So it's just one of those things where you have to wonder, and I do wonder, because the result has been so abysmal, and the solution is so obvious, if you ask me. Drive the price of energy to zero. Drive the price of food to as close to zero as possible, right? As abundant energy at a very low cost, abundant food, abundant housing, balanced housing. Refuse to take immigrants that we can't house and serve. Say, no, we're not going to do that. I'm sorry, we're going to deport them, and we're going to deport them now. And I'm going to create a situation where they don't want to come here because they're not welcome here, because we are not going to destroy our country for foreigners. Period. Like, what? Where are the people who are advocating for the citizens who live here, for crying out loud? Stephen Guilbeault, there's a full court press to convince us that the carbon tax is working, worth it, not crushing and inflationary and stupid because it's pointless anyway. Stephen Guilbeault says, Canada's carbon rebate payments start April 15th. We just launched a new tool to help you find out how much you'll make. 8 out of 10 Canadians get more back than they pay. Pricing pollution keeps us on track to meet our climate goals, while the rebates help families. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. The cost of everything is unaffordable in Canada, and these people know they're doing damage, and they're just trying to sell it to us. And I'm not even going to play the video because they're liars. CTV News is publishing this: Canada heading into wildfire season with above average temperatures, minimal snow. The carrot and the stick. Here's money. You're getting paid for the carbon tax, and look, everybody can go hiking because of the carbon tax. And then the stick is, if you don't do this, the world is going to be wildfires just like it was last year. And last year it was arson. It wasn't wildfires, it was arson. Jonathan Wilkinson, he's an MP. He's the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources. He says the 2023 wildfire season showed us what the world would be like if we fail to tackle climate change and prepare for increasingly intense burn seasons. No, it was arson. And we're being manipulated through people, activists, who again are captured by the climate cult. So, and it's not It's not true what they say. Freedom Warriors is responding to True North, and True North is highlighting Conservative MP James Beeson calls on the Trudeau government to pass Bill C-234 in its original form, which aims to eliminate the carbon tax on farmers. And Freedom Warriors says, why not scrap the tax for all Canadians? Yep, that's what should be done in reality, definitely, 100%. China. We have to talk about China. So watch for this controversy about this televised meeting between the premiers and the prime minister that's mandated within 5 weeks. So it'll be before the summer, right? Like, get your popcorn out, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be lots of fun. I'm sure there's going to be battles about this. They may even take it to court. They may even say, you can't do that. Or they'll pass some law that says they can't do that. Jagmeet Singh will pull his support and they'll say, oh, well, actually, it didn't pass. There'll be something. Wait for it. Moving on, we've got to talk about China. Justin Trudeau testified yesterday. He was late because that's what he does. And John Ivison says, on Chinese interference, Trudeau sounds like someone with something to hide. The plausible explanation is that the Prime Minister does not want a light shone on his party's mutually beneficial association with China. Yep. The crux of the foreign interference inquiry is to discover whether Justin Trudeau danced with the devil in the pale moonlight. I don't know that we have to put that kind of, he was working with foreign governments to get himself elected. Isn't that treason? So why are we painting him as the Joker in like a modern version of Batman? Like, I don't know. And I mean, painting him as the bad guy, fine, but let's be very, very direct in our words, I think, because they're direct in their actions. In other words, did the Prime Minister put partisan interest ahead of the national interest by turning a blind eye, or worse, encouraging China's meddling in the 2019 and 2021 federal elections to benefit the Liberal Party's electoral fortunes? There are people within the security services who believe he did. One senior source told me last year he considers the Liberal Party to be a co-conspirator with Beijing because it failed to act on information provided by the security agencies. Trudeau was the star witness on Wednesday as the first phase of hearings into foreign interference at the public inquiry before Commissioner Josie Hogue wound up. It's clear that some attempts at foreign interference were made. The Canadian Security Intelligence Service briefed Trudeau that China clandestinely and deceptively interfered in both 2019 and 2021 general elections. But the takeaway from the Prime Minister's appearance is that it is extremely difficult to get a clear picture of the impact of those attempts or whether there was any witting complicity. Trudeau made the case that both elections were free and fair and that his government did all it could to ensure integrity of federal votes. No, it didn't. They were preventing Rebel News from covering debates. They prevented Bernier from attending debates, all sorts of tricks and Antifa protesters for PPC events and all sorts of crazy stuff, man. So they didn't do that. It was disciplined, business-like performance absent the standard theatrics. He pointed to his government's effort to protect the integrity of the electoral process, the establishment of a national security parliamentary committee, and the security and intelligence threat to elections site task force, as well as the panel of 5 public servants charged with monitoring interference during elections. Yeah, they did a terrible job, eh? The Prime Minister downplayed the suggestion that Chinese officials expressed a preference for Liberal Party victory in the 21 election. He said relations with China were strained over the detention of the 2 Michaels, and Canada was extremely active in drumming up support for their release from around the world. It would seem improbable that the Chinese government had a preference for the Liberals in the election, he said. Commission counsel then raised the case of Don Valley North MP Han Dong. Evidence already heard by the commission suggested that he won the nomination with help from busloads of Chinese international students. Trudeau said he was briefed by Liberal campaign director Jeremy Broadhurst during the 2019 election that CSIS was concerned about possible Chinese government interference to help nominate Dong. Trudeau asked if there was evidence the plan had been enacted or whether Dong knew about the busloads of foreign students. He said the answers from CSIS were not clear, and since he and Broadhurst agreed the threshold for overturning the nomination process was high, they decided not to remove Dong as the candidate. His testimony suggested a textbook definition of willful blindness. So willful blindness is you don't want to hear or see what you're being told, which is exactly what I was accusing him of with the impact of the carbon tax, the negative impact of the carbon tax. And it doesn't have any positive impact, carbon tax, on the environment. Here's Trudeau, part of this briefing. Contrarian says, Trudeau today in his testimony let everyone know he doesn't bother reading briefings, especially ones on foreign interference. Here we go.
When it comes to briefings, and others can speak to this and how they make decisions about what to read from their prepared notes during an actual briefing with ministers or Prime Minister. But it is much more of a conversation than someone reading a prepared text to the minister that they're briefing. Yeah, there are elements in here that say, for example, having read the briefing note in preparation for this this inquiry, that talk about how serious foreign interference is and how we need to do more. When it comes to briefings,
it seemed like he lost his train of thought halfway through, didn't it? It seemed like he was kind of lost on what he was talking about. The only way to guarantee to make sure that I receive the necessary information, says Trudeau, is to give me an in-person briefing or over a secure line if necessary on any issue or any issue or priority issue. Trudeau on how he consumes intelligence, on how it's incumbent on advisors to spell it out. Duncan says, no wonder Canada is so effed up. The Prime Minister, who spends an inordinate amount of time on vacation or on personal time, only accepts information from in-person briefings or calls. This is like the excuse for Minister Saijan, who doesn't read emails. This is the dog ate my homework government. Here's Andy Lee, and it says, Katie Telford in committee testifying about foreign interference. There's nothing that's ever kept from the Prime Minister.
Madam Chair, could our witness tell us whether there is information that she is keeping within Cabinet and that is not shared either to ministers or the Prime Minister on foreign interference?
No, there's not. If I'm understanding you correctly, there is nothing that is ever kept from the Prime Minister. Certainly not by me.
Did you see Bardish Shager there giving the thumbs up? Like at the end of a movie where if they score the goal, they win, and then the crowd reacts, and right, you see the kid from earlier in the show going, yeah. Bardish Shager giving big thumbs up. It's just funny, like, honestly. Oh my gosh. Jason says, Katie, Trudeau reads lots. Trudeau, I don't read. Here's directly from The Simpsons, right?
A chance to kick some ass for Mother Earth.
I'm listening.
Well, I've narrowed your choices down to 5 unthinkable options. Each will cause untold misery.
I picked number 3.
You don't even want to read them first?
I was elected to lead, not to read. Number 3.
Is that Klaus? This is how Klaus views himself. I think it was supposed to be Schwarzenegger, but questions abound. Here is CBC Watcher. This is Bob Fife talking about how Justin Trudeau never really wanted to believe the intelligence from CSIS. And while I was reading the opinion piece going over Trudeau's testimony, it was talking about how he didn't want to overturn Han Dong's nomination on something that didn't have enough evidence, right? But this guy's saying, CSIS intelligence isn't evidence. It's just the beginning of a process, and the process never got started, right? Like they told Justin Trudeau, and then he didn't do anything. So how can you get evidence if nothing's done? So here we go.
He's not sure about the reliability of some of the CSIS information, that this is just intelligence, it's not evidence, but nobody is suggesting, by the way, that CSIS intelligence is evidence. So I think that, to me, struck me is that this is a government that really doesn't want to hear this information from CSIS. It didn't want to hear it very clearly when CSIS went to them about Han Dong and China's operations in trying to get Mr. Dong elected or winning the nomination in 2019. They just not accept that the intelligence that had been provided them was valid. And so they allowed Mr. Dong to win a nomination, and he went on to become the Liberal member of Parliament. And in terms of the 2021 election campaign, when CSIS numerous documents laid out how Chinese officials were mounting a disinformation campaign to defeat some conservative candidates, and information from CSIS that they had recordings of Chinese diplomats saying that they felt that it would be better to have a liberal minority government than the conservatives. Again, he said, well, you know what, with that kind of stuff, I mean, it could be just diplomats bragging about this. So I'm kind of a little bit taken aback that this does not seem to be a government that takes seriously intelligence provided by our spy service.
Dan,
So they're not taking the intelligence seriously, or, and this is what I think is more likely, they take it seriously, and maybe when the intelligence service comes and tells them, they go and warn people like Han Dong, like, hey, did you know that CSIS is totally looking over your shoulder? Like, whoa, dude, look out, CSIS is on your back. And we've got to get you elected. That seems like what they did. Here's Globe Politics. It says Trudeau cast doubt on CSIS intelligence about Chinese interference in 2019 and 2021. Because he didn't want to believe it. And then he took that intelligence and warned Han Dong about it. So that's weird, right? And somebody makes the point, and we're going to get there any minute, but the juxtaposition to warning Han Dong is, of course, they didn't warn Michael Chong. Weird, right? I wonder why they do that. Cheryl says Trudeau's testimony so far, briefing notes ignored, don't reflect the conversations held. So the things that were written down aren't what we talked about. Weird. David Vinot is being thrown under the bus. Trudeau says the October 27th, 22 briefing notes not particularly close to what Trudeau and his staff heard. Various and specific cases were discussed, but that's redacted material. So interesting, right? What you wrote down isn't what happened. And so you go under the bus. But he's coming back Friday. So I wonder how that's going to be, I wonder how that's going to go over. Holly Doan is reporting Prime Minister Trudeau's office in 2019 was told Han Dong was under security surveillance, but kept him in the Liberal caucus, records show. Yep. Looked the other way, right? Robin Urbach is the one who made the juxtaposition exponentially dark that a member of the Liberal Party warned Han Dong that he was being watched by CSIS, but no one told Michael Chong he was being targeted by China, right? Yeah. Wild stuff. Here's True North, and it says Conservative MP Michael Cooper calls on the Trudeau government to identify the top Liberal who broke the law by diverging secret information about a CSIS investigation into foreign interference. And so here's Michael Cooper.
Yesterday at the public inquiry, it was confirmed that CSIS briefed top Liberal officials that Beijing interfered in the nomination on behalf of the member for Don Valley North. Today, the Globe and Mail is reporting that a top Liberal broke the law by leaking classified information that resulted in the member for Don Valley North being tipped off that he was being monitored by CSIS. So who broke the law? What is the name of that top Liberal?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Speaker, thank you. I thank the member for the question. In regards to the fact that, unfortunately, foreign interference is a problem that some foreign state actors have taken to try to undermine our democracy. But, Mr. Speaker, it's not new, and that's precisely why we have taken this matter so seriously. It's precisely why we have initiated a number of steps to strengthen our democracy. And, Mr. Speaker, we've all agreed to the inquiry, and we want to allow that work to continue so Canadians have a full picture of the issues around foreign interference.
Wouldn't it be good if she answered the question?
The Honourable Member from St. Albert.
He gets a follow-up.
Mr. Speaker, that non-answer is completely unacceptable. Enough of the cover-up. Only a handful of Liberal officials were briefed by CSIS. We now know that a top Liberal broke the law, undermined the work of CSIS, and put the partisan interests of the Liberal Party ahead of national security. So, when did the Prime Minister first learn of this criminal leak, and did he refer it to the RCMP?
True. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, all parties in this House agreed to the term.
Non-answer, right? So she's not going to answer, and everybody knows it. And it looks bad. But I guess the real answer would look worse. David Jacobs says the CCP, Chinese Communist Party's assessment is that the Liberal Party's leadership is astoundingly naive, remarkably uninformed, and reliably unprincipled. Did you see how she answered the question? The question was pretty simple. It's clear that somebody broke their briefing rules. I don't know if it's against the law. Is it against the law to tell somebody that they're under investigation by the RCMP, or not the RCMP, by CSIS? I just assume. I haven't done anything wrong, but at this point in time, standing up and saying that man can't be a woman is enough to get a CSIS file opened on you. So at this point, right? Astoundingly naive, reliably unprincipled. Yes, they will not answer a straight question with a straight answer, period, especially if it might damage their political careers. Jason says, Liberal House Leader Karina Gould was briefed 7 times on China's interference in our federal elections. However, she doesn't recall what those briefings were about. Now, if you give Karina Gould the benefit of the doubt and say maybe the information wasn't clear, the information was delivered in a manner that inferred it didn't require intense and immediate attention, she, as a member of Canadian Parliament, should have been alarmed enough to launch an investigation herself, or at least request CSIS investigate further. But she did none of that, and she didn't do it because her party was riding the China gravy train, and they knew there was no way they were winning a general election without China's help. These people aren't working for Canada, and I doubt they ever were. At best, they're working for themselves. At worst, they're operating as agents for the CCP. Sam Cooper says, Conservative lawyer says Minister Gould was briefed 7 times on PRC election interference, and yet she's apparently disputing the briefs related to China especially, and doesn't agree PRC election interference occurred. Astoundingly naive, remarkably uninformed, reliably unprincipled. That's the Canadian government. Here's a bit of Karina Gould's testimony, but we're not going to watch it, I don't think. Sheila Gunn Reid says, Gould says she worked closely in and collaborated with the opposition parties in the lead up to the 2019 PRC contaminated election as early as the fall of 2017. So Karina Gould is somebody who really believes in whatever the Liberals are trying to accomplish. So she's very ideologically aligned with Justin Trudeau. Here is a mashup of Justin Trudeau being kind of... being Justin Trudeau, but this was funny. Housing. This I thought was a funny little meme. It's 30 seconds. We'll watch it. Here we go.
Affordable housing is right this way. Hello, welcome to Canada. Inflation's at an all-time high. Yeah, shawarma plates are like $20. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Hello, welcome to Canada. Average cost of a 2-bedroom apartment is $2,700. Nothing's available. Good luck. Yeah, keep going. Hello, welcome to Canada. Our news is censored now. No one really understands fully what that means. It all happened really quick. Hi, welcome to Canada. Oh, refugee? Yeah. Here's your blanket and Walmart gift card. Thanks. Have a good one. Yeah. Hello, welcome to Canada. Oh, you're Canadian. Welcome back. Things feel different now. You'll see.
Right? So I just wanted to show you that. I thought it was kind of funny. There's a lot going on in Canada and stuff that has never happened in my 40 years. People are talking about things in a very different way now. And it's interesting. It's almost, there are lots of different kinds of people, but some people want to talk about what's going on and talk solutions, and other people want to completely ignore it and pretend it's not happening. And if you talk about it, they kind of get angry with you. So that's interesting too. National Post says Trudeau government paying $84 million to firm employing Katie Telford's husband to manage rent assistance aid program. This sounds like a Rive scam. A little bit, right? The PMO says Telford had nothing to do with the contract between Robert Silver's firm and a federal crown corporation. Does anybody know anybody who can manage rent assistance aid programs? Katie Telford says, I do. But this meeting didn't happen. I don't remember it at all. We experienced it differently. All right, sounds good. Seems very, very crony to me, right? Insiders getting massive sole source contracts. $84 million? What's $84 million between a prime minister and his top aide? His husband. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful